So good morning, my name is Linda McElwee. I work in both the soil and water programs at the RCD, and I live in the Navarro watershed and do a lot of work in Navarro watershed restoration, working on a watershed scale. I'm also a kind of native plant specialist, so we wear a number of hats at the RCD, and I've been working in the sustainable ag program on climate beneficial farming practices. So that's part of what I will be holding today, and sort of talking about landscape level restoration where carbon sequestration is applicable. I'll pass it to Doug, and we can just keep going around the
yeah, and you know, yeah.
Yeah, hi, good morning, everyone. Doug Turk, I am a forestry project manager at the Mendocino County Resource Conservation District. Yeah, I recently graduated from Oregon State University, where I studied a lot of climate change impacts to forest ecosystems, climate refugia, fire refugia. So I studied the interaction of fire and climate change on forest landscapes.
Right, thanks. Seth, do you want to go next? We'll start with our team.
Yeah, sure. Good morning. I'm Seth Myrick. I'm the Sustainable Agriculture Project Manager at the RCD. I started here last November. Before then, I did research on regenerative agriculture practices and food nutritional quality at the Center for Regenerative Agriculture in Chico, which is also where I went to school. And now here at the RCD, I assist with implementing and finding funds for climate smart agricultural practices to improve farm efficiency and sequester carbon. And then I also work with Linda on carbon farm plans with landowners.
George, you want to go next? Thanks.
Sure. I am a local activist who's lived here on the coast for 20 years. I've been working on the millside issues forever. I'm hoping to glean a little bit of insight on what might be our opportunities with the restoration of the coastal prairie and creek daylighting and some of the kind of coastal plateau opportunities we have. You are all probably aware of this, but we have well over 400 acres that are being contested, and ownership issues are rife right now. But that's kind of refreshing for me, because for years we were up against Georgia Pacific, which was owned by Koch Industries and was always, well, when I was talking with Ann Riley years ago, she would say, you have to get control of the property, George. You can't do this stuff with an uncooperative property owner, which is obvious when you think about it, but you know, aspirational things can get complicated, of course. But so we've been at this for a long time. And now that I hear who's here on the call, I'm really hoping that we might be able to do something along these lines. I was a co-founder of the Noyo Food Forest at the very beginning, and there is so much interest in our community in the idea of sustainable ag and bringing into the conversation here about local food and local resilience, the opportunities for carbon sequestration. So this is the beginning of, I hope, a number of important meetings for our community. So thank you for being here and doing this.
Thanks, George. Good morning, Peter. You're muted,
Peter.
Yeah, I was trying to keep the background noise down. I'm Peter Mcnamee. I am a volunteer with the Grassroots Institute. And I think to a certain extent, we're having this meeting today because of the previous meeting that the Institute had with one of its workshops, which is the Climate Crisis Work Group with Dan Jurdy. And he brought up this idea of carbon sequestration in regard to landscaping, and said that he would try to set up this meeting, and invited many of us to participate. So that's my role. Is I'm here mostly to, just as an observer, and to follow up on that meeting that Dan suggested we have with you folks about what our organization. Maybe it's worth saying this. George has already touched upon it, but our organization is an all-volunteer organization. We have one staff person, Michelle, who's on the call as well. Michelle McMillan, there she is. And she's our media and coordination person. But otherwise, we are a group of about approximately 400 participants, give or take a few in our organization. And we have 8 work groups that focus on things like water, like forest, like climate change, like eradication of invasive species on the headlands. George is the most familiar with and leads the work group on the Mendocino headlands, the Fort Bragg headlands. And then we have another project for weed eradication on the Mendocino headlands. So each of those work groups has 10 to 15 people at any given point. I'm actively involved. And we've been working a lot with Dan Jurdy to promote solar in Mendocino County, particularly on public buildings and getting public lands to lower their carbon footprint by installing solar on their properties with batteries as backup, with installing electric vehicles and electric vehicle chargers, converting the public fleet over to electric vehicles, as well as public transportation. We've been working on water conservation and rain catchment systems. So it's a really diverse group of people spread all over the county doing all kinds of things. And we work with Eileen over there, who's going to talk next, I hope, and Climate Change Mendocino in partnership with them frequently on these kinds of issues. So that's why I've been asked to be here.
Great. Thank you for all that background, Peter. Really appreciate that. And Eileen. Good morning.
Thanks, Peter, for your intro. Yeah, I'm Eileen Mitro, and I started Climate Action Mendocino in 2017, and we've been going strong ever since. We meet every month. And somehow I found Grassroots Institute, so I meet with them too, and I'm a member there. And I go to all of the Mendocino County Climate Action Advisory Committee meetings, which is the county climate group. So I'm pretty well connected. So I'm most excited about this call because of the recording. I agree with George. I don't much like recordings in every instance, but this one will be useful, I think, to share with a lot of our contacts.
Great. Thanks, Eileen. Good morning, Katie. We're just going around doing introductions, and we're mostly through, but it's going to go Michelle and then you, unless somebody else joins us. So good morning, Michelle.
Good morning. Well, Peter did, the pertinent half of my intro, which is that I'm the communications and media coordinator for the Grassroots Institute. I'm very excited to be here this morning. I'm here kind of on behalf of Carrie Durkee, who couldn't make it. Academically, I have a background in community resource management through the lens of water, so always interested in this type of conversation, and excited to see where the meeting takes us.
And just could you tell us a little bit Carrie's role?
Carrie is one of the members of the core group of Grassroots Institute. She's a longtime organizer, and I don't know what your titles are, Peter, in reference to the Climate Action Group, but one of the heads of that, if that's the right way to put it.
Okay, great. Thank you. Katie, good morning. Welcome.
Good morning. Sorry all that I was late. I finally got a call back from someone I've been trading messages with, so apologies. Yeah, I'm Katie Smith. I work with the Mendocino County Resource Conservation District in the soil and water programs with Linda and Seth. And I've been here about a year, and previously I worked in restoration as well as water management primarily. Thanks for having me.
So thank you, everybody. It's great to be here together. I feel like this might be the first of a number of meetings we might want to be having, and we'll just consider this an introduction, I think. And so I didn't, admittedly, I did not prepare a special presentation, but I have some slides from a presentation we did, a workshop we did on regenerative and ecological farming with on Monday out at Ridgewood Ranch with the Community Alliance of Family Farmers and an organization called Conservation Works. And it might be just a drop, a jump off point. I'll try and go through them. I might go through them pretty quickly, but it's going to give you, I think, a sense of, at least from the agricultural side, there's a lot that we can talk about both on forestry and our rangelands as well. And as we restore our watersheds, more biological diversity, healthier streams, healthier forests, healthier soils. I mean, we just say all of these things. The healthier our ecosystems are, all are climate beneficial practices. Now, in agriculture, there's some calculators and modeling that we can use to quantify, and that's helpful. And the same in forestry. I'm not as familiar with them, but there are some modeling that can be done when we do projects now. Almost all of the agency funding that's coming through from the state in particular has now you have to calculate a climate benefit. So that's been happening maybe for 5 or 6 years now. And are you okay with me, you guys, if I run through some of these slides? Does that sound like a good plan? All right, let me share my screen and we can start there and get my slideshow going here. No timings, and we'll start from the beginning. All right, let's see if I can get everybody can see my screen. Okay, great, thank you.
Do you want to put it in slide mode, Linda, maybe?
Is it not? Maybe there's a delay.
No, we're seeing
maybe, okay, let's see.
there you go.
Oh, see, I thought I was in, okay, here we go. I am in slide mode. It just, there's a delay, I think. Okay, so.
Now we're not seeing anything.
It's coming. Give it 1 minute.
Okay.
Pretty sure. I think it says anything yet? Let me know. Ah, there it goes. Okay,
Yep, we're
there
good.
it goes. Okay, so we all know climate challenges, right? This is just a little overview of what I'll go over in this slideshow, and the agriculture being part of the solution. I'm going to go over some of the practices in soil and water, and then just touch on grazing and forest lands, and we'll hand that over to Doug. We have some resources at the end. So again, I'm going to probably go through these pretty quick because I want to have time for conversation for sure. And let's go. How do I move my cursor? Not going. Let's see. Oh, there it is. Oh, okay. As we all see, particularly these are pictures that we've seen in the last 10 years. We have been in a drought since 2012. We're now 10 years in. This is probably, some reports, the worst drought we've had in 1,200 years. And I've heard some speculation we could just have another 10 years of drought ahead of us, but we just don't know. The last from 2020 through this year, 2020 and 2021 were the worst drought years on record, even worse than 76, 77, which were pretty devastating. And that was sort of the end of kind of a final nail in the coffin for some of our fisheries. We had, this was 114 or 115 in Boonville, but we were actually measured 118 2 weeks ago. So this is, that was a new record for sure. And everybody, you guys were kind of I think you were pretty warm, but protected on the coast. So inland was very scary, and the reality, and this very sobering, the reality of what we could be facing. Of course, then there's fires that have been happening throughout our landscape. So that's something also we're contending with. This is out above Laytonville and Bell Springs. It's out there last week. And And you all already know this, I'm sure, but just to, for our listeners that may see this presentation other places, that California has these aggressive goals for 2030 that came from 2006 AB 32. Arnold Schwarzenegger passed the Climate Action Bill. And so we are now 8 years out, actually going to very close to just 7 years out to 2030. So California has been on a fast track to try and reduce our emissions below the 1990 levels and to be carbon neutral by 2050. They've been basically, it started with the greenhouse gas reduction funds. They started basically fees for polluters and raised, I think the first year, $836 million. That then started, or around there, $850 million around there, and they start funneling these funds into the state agencies through transportation, energy. Agriculture came a little late because at first agriculture has been considered part of the problem, and it has been part of the problem in many cases and a contributor, but it's not farming itself, it's how we farm. And then so basically there's a above our business as usual. So it's a drawdown above and beyond what we're doing now to draw down at least 15 to 20 million metric tons by 2030. The exciting thing for us in agriculture is it is part of the solution where we actually can store and sequester carbon in the soils. And so it's actually a drawdown solution. So what we do is we look at soil practices now. There's we now put our planning carbon at the center of our planning lens when working with ag producers. And we look at ways where they can reduce emissions from less, using less tractor passes, less fuel, or less pumping is less energy, also conserves water. So we can store carbon in both soil above and below ground plant materials, so growing plants as well as storing carbon in the soil. There's also a suite of water practices that reduce fuel and energy and then water use efficiencies that the state is now incentivizing through some of their programs to help agriculture make these shifts to climate beneficial farming practices. Some of the benefits of carbon sequestration, again, is, just things you probably may already know, but as we sequester more carbon, we improve the soil structure, which is like the aggregate structure you may hear. It's like actually the building blocks of soil, which holds water better and stores nutrients better in the soil. It reduces erosion. It increases the soil fertility so you can grow better and stronger plant material. It improves biodiversity, not only above ground, but below ground in our microflora. We have a healthier ecology and improved agricultural performance overall. This is something from NRCS that is an important metric for us, where if we can increase the soil organic matter in the soil by 1%, we can hold an additional 25,000 gallons of water per acre of I think it's the top inch of soil, a few inches of soil. So this is a drought. What in most of these practices, as we they give us climate resiliency for both drought, but also for floods. So holds water longer, allows water to be held in the soil, released to our streams longer over time. It reduces the need over the summer season. And it also, in the winter time, this increased soil health also allows water to infiltrate better and actually sink in and recharge groundwater, reduce soil erosion. There's like, it's a multi-benefit package if we switch these practices. And just a metric in the Anderson Valley, if we could, increase our soil organic matter by 1% across the 2,700 acres of vineyards here, that could help lead to about 200 acre feet of additional water storage annually. A couple of the state programs that come through the California Department of Food and Agriculture there's the Healthy Soils Program is the main one. I should have probably put that up at the top. That's actually where it's a lot of interest in this. Farmers can apply. They're the applicant. It may be changing but farmers have been the applicant. We at the RCD are technical assistance providers. We get a separate grant through CDFA. to assist landowners with to apply for this program, for both of these programs. So you can get up to $100,000 as a farmer. You can get up to $200,000 for this SWEEP, which is State Water Efficiency and Enhancement Program. And I'm happy to share these slides afterwards, but there's some nuance to the SWEEP program. It's just one application per APN. The Healthy Soils program is you can apply for a practice. You can apply to that program over and over. It doesn't matter which APN, but it has to be for relatively either a new practice or a practice that wasn't implemented the year before. For example, compost. You just have to have a break of a year. Some of the practices real quick, I'm not going to spend too much time here, but cropland has a whole suite of practices. There's 23 of them in total. And these are, they're all based on USDA and natural resource conservation. These are conservation practices that NRCS is Natural Resource Conservation Service, our federal partner in soil health and water conservation. They have already vetted all of these practices, and this is what has been designated as climate beneficial specifically. There's more, these are the most are in cropland. So again, no-till, reduced-till, there's riparian work in here. So a lot of varying practices that can be implemented on cropland. Vineyard and orchard practices, compost, these are a suite of them. This is the full suite. There's just these 11 practices. And then the grazing land has these 8 practices that are all have been deemed as climate beneficial practices. Now, part of what, so you can apply both through Natural Resource Conservation Service has their own funding programs. I'll talk about that in a little bit, but it's called EQIP, Environmental Quality Incentive Program. And then CDFA, California Department of Food and Agriculture, they have their Healthy Soils Program and the SWEEP, the State Water Efficiency Enhancement Program. Some climate beneficial water practices. So again, these are more targeted for agriculture. So, you know, in terms of the city or individual landowners, some of these things may not be as applicable. The Healthy Soils, you know, there's some criteria. We'd be happy to talk to anybody and see if they can fit into the program. It is meant for ag though. So improving pumping efficiency. What's not on here, and it should be, is solar. And I heard you mention, George, solar. There's solar arrays for pumping plants for agriculture that are being paid for. And we're happy to help landowners, again, walk and talk through project development and apply for these programs. We also work on carbon farm planning, which is where we take the planning lens of putting carbon at the center, and again, look at all of the opportunities on farm for reducing emissions through their, you know, tractor equipment and farming operations, as well as opportunities to sequester and draw down carbon and store it in the soil or the plant life material. And so those are both cropland, vineyard and orchards, and rangeland. And basically we work with the landowner to, you know, create maps, describe the existing practices that they're already doing, and then we look at opportunities for additional practices. The real value, one, we want to calculate what a farm is already doing and the carbon values that they're already doing, but what we'll get paid for and incentivized is the above and beyond. So it's actually, we have to get like kind of where can we go above and beyond what we're already doing. Being in Mendocino County, we have a lot of, I would say, particularly in cropland, our small farmers are organic farmers primarily, I would say. We're not large, you know, monocrops, you know, farms growing crops. So a lot of them are already doing a lot of these practices. So that's the good news. The modeling program is called Comet Planner. And basically what we do is there's both an original Comet Planner that was developed by Colorado State University. And then California Department of Food and Agriculture has already, they basically have, they've taken this Comet Planner and put it into their own program. So this is the CDFA version where it gives you, you put in an acreage of a certain practice that you choose. In Mendocino County, this is compost application, and the number of acres that you're putting the compost on. It gives you these values of how much carbon dioxide will be, and then measures it into a CO2 equivalent. So these are the metric tons of drawdown, and then a price that they will pay for that application of compost on 50 acres. These are, and you download this report, and it's part of the application process. Very useful tool that we can show you how to do that more at some point if you're interested to learn more. And anybody can, you can kind of, it's cometplanner.org, I believe, -planner.org. In Mendocino County, we're natural resource rich. So we have a lot of opportunity for sequestering carbon across the whole landscape. We have the coastal prairie and grasslands where the long-lived, deep-rooted perennial grasses, they have evolved to periodically burn. A lot of our ecosystems are basically evolved with fire, adapted to fire. So there's now good and bad fire that we can think of in our landscape. We have prescribed and planned grazing is something that's evolved a lot in our thinking more recently from the work with Alan Savory and is adopted by Natural Resource Conservation Service, NRCS. And then, which basically, you know, where we have our rangelands or where the prairie grasses, and we can manage our herds and flocks to for the benefit of our perennial grasses and annual native grasses and forbs. And there can be some, you know, there's calculations for all of that too, for prescribed grazing. It's not, doesn't pay a lot, but it does pay something and is considered a climate beneficial practice. So electric, and a lot has moved along now with electric fencing and seasonality. So something that needs to be, there's a lot that we can do more here in helping to work with our ranchers and landowners and understanding best practices for grazing, I think, just for this climate beneficial focus here. Doug will talk more about this, but our forest landscapes, you know, we're very forest rich here. It's a beautiful thing and a great asset. The redwood forest is, I think, one of the top carbon sequestering forests in the world. And we are blessed to have be rich in redwood forests, let alone all the other oak woodlands and the mixed hardwoods. A lot, and Doug, you can go into all of this a little bit more, but just some examples of, we have fuel load reduction, the treating gullies, address stream incision, these are all things we're working on. Prescribed burning is not something we're doing per se, but we are supporting and working with the Mendocino Fire Safe Council, and prescribed burning is becoming very, you know, much more, we have some burn bosses here in Mendocino County, Kyle Farmer, Andres Avila in the Anderson Valley, and then oak woodland restoration and planting. Doug, should I just pause here, and do you want to jump in? It seems like mitigating for catastrophic wildfire is one thing that is one of the main things, right? Because since our fires have come and burned, we have become California's, it's offsetting any benefits we've been making, all the fires we've been having.
Yeah, that's right. So our objective here is really around forest health and wildfire risk reduction. So we help landowners, and we have similar programs. So what Linda described. So we also work with the Natural Resource Conservation Service, NRCS, CAL FIRE, and the Prescribed Burn Association. We can hand landowners out to them. So we help landowners by going out and looking at their property, looking at the fuel load on their property, the overall health of the forest on their property, what type of forest landscape or woodland landscape do they have, and what are their objectives for managing the land. So we can provide technical assistance to them and hook them up with cost share programs to help them either mitigate overloaded fuel situations or, of soil erosion or whatever issues they have in their property, to help them get it back to a more sustainable landscape and a less fire-prone landscape. Ideally, that, if the fire does come through that particular stand, it's not catastrophic. It becomes a beneficial fire that really helps to maybe clear the understory out, but maintain those larger trees, which sequester and store a lot of carbon that, we want to keep those trees alive and healthy in the landscape. So yeah, we go out frequently and work with landowners on those types of things.
One thing I was going to say, Doug, is that because we have these calculators and these the grants that we've been getting, there's a lot of funding coming for forest health and fire resilient landscapes right now, and the carbon benefit, it's hard to show. So because a lot of it is removing these stacked fuel loads, so we're actually needing to remove carbon out of the forest in some way, shape, or form, and how we treat those. What's coming out with, if it's chipping, or we've had some biochar experimentation through a grant that we have. If it's chop and whatever, lop and drop, or
lop and scatter.
and
go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that really the calculation is showing that the difference between a beneficial, it's the reduction in a catastrophic wildfire. If the whole forest burned, it would have a certain emissions value. And what the value comes from if we're looking at a carbon benefit, it's really making sure that we don't get those fires to get up into the crowns and have these catastrophic hot fires, or bad fires that we actually we're having to mitigate for some of the legacy land use practices.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we've had a century of fire suppression, or even more than that at this point, and so our forests are really overgrown. They're stacked with fuels, and we don't necessarily take the carbon out. A lot of times, with chipping or mastication, we're putting it back in the ground. So we're just redistributing the fuel load to a less risky fuel distribution. But those fuels, or that biomass, is back on the ground and eventually can degrade and go back into the soil. And even larger trees, if we take them out, we generally don't remove them from the landscape. We put them on the ground. We make sure there's soil contact, and over time they will degrade, and that carbon goes back into the soil. So we're more and more interested in forest soil health and forest carbon sequestration. There's been a lot of research that shows that when you release a forest stand, so it can grow larger trees over the life cycle of a forest store more carbon than a bunch of smaller trees. So when you take out those smaller trees, you put that material back on the ground, and the trees that are remaining can grow larger and actually will store more carbon over time. So all those practices, I didn't go to school to cut down trees necessarily, so it's a bit of okay, but actually the more I've learned about it, the more I understand the benefits of doing that. And when you take some of those small diameter trees out, you're actually restoring forest health to a better situation and storing more carbon both in the ground and in the remaining trees that are there. So and we do have there are similar, I don't have access to it at the moment, but there are similar carbon calculators that we have access to. We don't use them regularly, and it's something we probably need to do more of here, but we do have access to those, and I can send out links if people are interested after we talk.
Great, thanks, Doug. I have a slide in a little bit that includes some of the funding programs that you have.
Great.
All right, let's see. I've lost my, okay. So just on a landscape level, all of these practices with infiltration, we've sped up our hydrology from our road networks with culverts and creating gullies all over the landscape. So repairing some of that will help our stream flows and also our salmon habitat. And there's a whole suite of practices inside of here that could be done on a landscape level. And some of this could be quantified perhaps in Comet Planner if there were kind of specific bioswales and areas like that were planted with, pollinator beneficial insect pollinator, habitat in some stormwater basins. There's probably a ton of opportunity, I am sure, in the city of Fort Bragg and on the North Coast in our urban areas for stormwater basins and reforesting our landscapes and absorbing some of this runoff and slowing it down, letting it recharge our aquifers, and basically reducing sediment loads to streams, and we can grow some great pollinator friendly plants in the meantime. Again, these practices end up really helping they layering on top of one another, start sort of a change in what I've heard Brock Dolman and Brad Lancaster's talk about going from the drain age to the retain age, which I like that the way of thinking. And then pollinators, of course, are inside of all of this. So you guys are one of the first bee friendly, I think, cities and have a resolution up there, which is very cool. And kudos to Fort Bragg for that. And so they just, not pollinators, but insects just feed the whole food chain. So super important to have this habitat for all the other species. And again, just some of the co-benefits of some of the climate beneficial soil practices for on farm. And again, this is just a slide on the CDFA programs. One more on here is the North Bay Forest Improvement Program, Doug, that maybe you could talk about very briefly, but this is a very cool new program that is available for forest landowners.
Yeah, it's a program in Sonoma, Napa, Mendocino, Lake County that kind of came out of, I forget the name of the fire, but the 2017 fires down in Napa and Sonoma counties. And so this is a CAL FIRE funded program, and you actually don't need a forest management plan as long as you have technical assistance. It's great to have a forest management plan, of course. That's always a great thing to have if you have a larger forested area, but it's not required.
Oh, good.
Yeah, and we can also
Change
provide.
this
We're actually working on at the moment. So it's a biannual application. So September 30th and March 31st. So 2 times a year, and we can provide technical assistance to landowners that are interested. We're working through a number of those actually as we speak to help landowners understand what types of things they can do on the property, how this cost share program can benefit them, and then we will help them through the application process if needed. So it's a great program. There's actually CAL FIRE upped. They gave us another $3.5 million over the next 4 years for this program. So there's a fair amount of money there, and it's been really helpful for landowners, both with fuel mitigation or just forest health improvement within Mendocino, within the 5 counties that I mentioned. So have people reach out to us if they're interested.
That's like a 5 acre to 500 acre or five.
They upped it, so it's 5 to 5,000 acres now.
Okay.
And we can also partner with the NRCS, and you can apply for EQIP as well as North Bay FIP concurrently. So we will partner with, we'll go out on the landscape with the NRCS staff and look at it, and we can even divide it up and say, okay, that parcel is good for a North Bay FIP program. These other areas over here might be a good EQIP program, and we'll partner with the NRCS to package that together and help the landowner through all that.
Great, thank you. One more slide, and that just has our contact information on it. But I think, Seth, I'd love for you to talk about the Farm to Schools program that we have in Fort Bragg, because I think this group would really like to hear, since it got touched on, and maybe a little bit about the just SALC. We have hopefully some time. If I can stay over if people can, but if we have a hard.
Yeah, sure. I'll start with Farm to School and then see if anyone wants to talk about that or what we're looking at time. So yeah, me and Linda and Katie have a grant with North Coast Opportunities through the California Department of Food and Ag to do a Farm to School program at Fort Bragg Middle School as well as at Laytonville High School. And essentially what we have been doing is coming into the classrooms 3 times per semester and teaching modules on kind of what we've been talking about today. We go to the 6th grade class at the middle school and 10th and 11th grade classes at the high school in Laytonville and talk about the principles and importance of healthy soils, the impact of climate beneficial agricultural practices that it has on our climate and on our local systems, and why it matters whether or not talking to the students, you are involved in agriculture or not. Try to make it click no matter what. And then we also talk about the importance and value of native plants and pollinators and supporting those systems through agricultural practices, but not also that, but also through city planning. And then we also do these kind of demonstrations as part of each class that we go to that go over really well. We have like a rainfall simulation, and we show how rainfall affects differently managed soils and how that can have a larger like watershed effect across a larger landscape based on the decisions we make when we steward our land, even at like a garden level, really. And we have a similar type of impactful demos for soil health and for the pollinator class. And then on top of that, we also do farm tours. That's another part of the grant. And so we've yet to do a field trip in Fort Bragg, but we're working with the 6th grade teacher at the middle school and the principal there now to get out there and do 2 before next March when the grant ends. And then in Laytonville, we've done trips to Irene's Garden, which is the largest vegetable grower in the county, with kindergarten through 6th graders through like a summer program with a group called Laytonville Healthy Start. And then we also went to one of the like kind of after school days with Laytonville Healthy Start and did like an abridged roundtable speed version of our 3 classes that we normally do at the high school as well, and made it a little bit more fun for kindergarten through 5th or 6th graders. And so that's been something we've been doing that we feel instantly recharged every time we do it, because it's just so fun and we can see wheels turning and things clicking with these 6th graders and these high schoolers. And it's just a really great thing to see. And Katie and I have talked a lot about this. We feel like both age groups are an amazing time to come and talk with people about essentially what it is we're talking about here today, and really have them thinking about that as they grow into young adults. So yeah, that's been a really great program we do.
Sorry, my battery was running low. I didn't realize my computer wasn't plugged in. So glad I didn't drop everybody. Thank you, Seth. I'm going to stop sharing screen now. And one last thing, I know we just have a moment, but there's the Sustainable Ag Lands Conservation Plan. And that is something I think, Eileen, you might have been on a call where the RCD got a grant through it's through the Department of Conservation, California Department of Conservation, but it's through the Strategic Growth Council, where we did one round with a previous round where we did an assessment of ag lands in the county that were at threat of being developed. And we got the second round that built on that initial analysis that now has more recommendations that may become the basis of an ag chapter for a climate action plan. And so that would be something, there's some, we presented to the Climate Action Committee, but that might be something in more detail that we might want to come back and talk with your group more about at some point. And I just want to, we have 10 minutes. So if there's any questions or things that we've left out or you'd like to hear any more about, we'd love to open it up and have more conversation here. Yeah, George.
I have, this is a great presentation. Thank you very much. And I'm glad we recorded it because now I have all that contact info. I will definitely be taking this to some of the small farmers and local ag people, and it's really exciting what you're talking about with the middle school. All that's great, but my focus, and I would love it if someone here could say they would be willing to participate in follow-up calls. My focus is, as I indicated, with this coastal environment. We are involved with big cleanup issues at the same time that we're talking about carbon sequestration opportunities. So we're talking about estuarine carbon sequestration. We're talking about creek daylighting and where the benefits reside there. And then this whole massive 400 plus acres, which is covered with asphalt and gravel and has been mightily abused for almost 200 years. We're talking about a model of restoration with expanded wildlife corridors, not just a little coastal trail along the coast, and many opportunities, I believe, for carbon sequestration. Is there anybody here who would welcome a call from me to go dig deeper in that respect? I don't see any hands right away. Okay, Linda, thank you.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay.
No, that's
Yeah,
really good
I mean-
because I know there's a lot out there, but I also know that I used to go to these conferences, these forestry conferences, and they would say, there's no such thing as carbon sequestration anywhere outside of the forest. Dead serious. And I would go, well, no, that's not really true. I've been attending. So, you know, I sounded like an idiot. I've been attending these pioneers conferences where we're all talking about rangeland, where John Wick is speaking about rangeland, you know, carbon sequestration and the Marin Carbon Project, blah, blah, blah. And the forestry people was just like, forget about it. It's not real, you know. But I know that that's all changing. And I just really want to take advantage of the fact that we're opening our minds and seeing new possibilities in other terrestrial environments than just the full-blown redwood forest. So,
Yeah.
you know, it's a new day. I get that. And you all just are doing fabulous work. So thank you very much for this presentation. Appreciate it.
You're very welcome. And yeah, we'd love to talk to you more about that. It underneath all that asphalt was grazing land or forest land at one point or whatever
Absolutely.
it was, you know, that got cleared, or I imagine it was probably coastal prairie, which we used to have millions of acres of, and we are down to the hundreds of thousands, 100,000. So, you know, it's diminished. It's a similar story as almost every.
And I just want to say our opportunities are huge because the Coastal Commission, the entire property that we're talking about on the mill site is within the coastal zone, and the Coastal Commission is really weighing in a very positive way with talk, not just about, you know, you've got to obey building codes, but really the opportunities for restoration. So there's a lot of support for this work right now.
Great. Absolutely. And there's funding too. So through other agencies that were not just CDFA or agricultural, or, you know, there's forest land, there's a wildlife conservation board, there's Department of Conservation.
We'll talk later because we don't have a whole
Sounds
lot
good.
of time. I just want to say there's also 70 acres that have been acquired by eminent domain that, in my opinion, we're going to get back in community control. That is forested land. It's very steep. It's not really good for logging particularly. Lime would be happy to, I mean, actually, it was a combination of people who had the property, but right now, a big chunk of that Pudding Creek watershed is being fought over in our community, control of it. And the people who currently have supposed ownership are trashing it. And so we really want to get it away from Mendocino Railway, and really start thinking about what we're talking about here, the opportunities for carbon sequestration and a healthier environment in the Pudding Creek watershed. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Or yeah, Eileen.
Yeah, this thanks for the presentation. It was thorough, and I've got lots of notes, and I'm eager to I don't know how you, I guess you'll send out the recording. Thanks. The first easy topic that comes to mind is Ukiah High School. So Seth, I've been to the environmental club there and worked with those kids, and it's right near the ag kids in their classes, and I've posed the questions you're talking about, and there's been basically no interest, or at least that was a couple of years ago. So I think it's ripe for the picking, and I can help you somewhat with that, but I would really like to see those ag kids exposed to some of this information.
Yeah.
I know what you mean, Eileen. I was an FFA myself, so I get what you're saying there. But yeah, I think that would be great. Our current grant ends next March, but I think I speak for all of us when I say we'd like to find another grant to keep work like that going. And Ukiah High would be another really great inroad for sure. And I would appreciate anything you could offer there when the time comes. I'll keep you in mind.
Great. There's also a program about no idling of cars, for pickup and dismissal times for kids. And their Eagle Peak here is a middle school, and they have a 6th grade just started taking that on. So the Eagle Peak is just the opposite of the ag program at Ukiah High, in that they're very receptive. So there's lots of possibilities. And I guess that was another thing that maybe your focus on the coast, Linda, is because Dan requested this, but I'm just thinking of all of the rangeland and parks, and I just spent a long time yesterday talking with the director of city planning in Ukiah. They're putting, we've got a draft general plan in the works, and it's getting closer and closer. And I see places where some of this can be applied, and that's another area. Yes. Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, but that would be good to have that. Yeah. Somehow, whoever you're talking to on the general plan, would maybe either we share this presentation, or we could go talk to them and explain a little bit more about.
Yeah, I invited him and he was very interested. So I'll make those connections with you and send him the recording. Tonight from 5:30 until 7, there's a discussion about the draft general plan, and we made lots of comments yesterday, and it's got a lot of climate focus.
So this is a whole update to the Mendocino County plan?
No, not Mendocino County, City of Ukiah.
Oh, okay, great. Okay, got it. UVAP, okay. Is that
Nevertheless, you do the City of Ukiah as well, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. Our jurisdiction's basically the whole county. And just to give some more context, there's 2 million acres in the whole county, and about 750,000 of that is rangeland. So, we have as a no tax base, right? So we have 90,000 people pretty roughly in the whole county, as you all know. So yeah, that I think, that's a plus, that we have a lot of natural resource land, and then, challenges because we don't have much of a tax base to help support all this work. I'm happy to stay. Does anybody have any other comments? I feel like there's, there's of course so much more. We could just probably talk all day about these topics. So,
I have a question for one of my colleagues who's here on the call, for Michelle, but I'd love to have the insight from the group as well as Michelle. Michelle is also really informed and has been working with the trail stewards people at different times. So I'm not trying to put you on the spot, Michelle, but did you hear anything here that we should convey to them as colleagues? Because they've been very supportive, at least in terms of written stuff about the work that we're doing on the coast, and coastal restoration issues. Is there any work there, you think, Michelle, or any connection there that we should be thinking about?
I mean, I'm definitely interested to talk more about all of this through the lens of Jackson. And I know CAL FIRE was mentioned a few times. I've been scrolling through your guys' website trying to answer some of my own questions about your forestry perspectives, and it's interesting to hear what you have to say. At this point, I don't have anything concrete. Although thank you, George, as always. But it's definitely an interesting lens. And I would be curious to dig into it a little bit more, but I'm not sure if others have to leave or what that looks like.
I do need to run, but Michelle, if you want to connect offline or separately, I'm happy to chat more about specifics of forestry. And yeah, we do a little bit in Jackson. It's primarily botanical survey kind of stuff. But I can, I'm happy to talk more if you want to send me an email or just propose a time. We can take that offline.
Great,
and
thank you.
I do need to go. So thanks everyone for a really good conversation.
Thanks, Doug, for being here. Have a great rest of your day. And maybe just before we go, while we're here, if there is a next step, or I will be sharing out the Zoom link and the presentation and some slides. There's a few I left out, so we'll see if I can slip some things in there or not. But that maybe could be relevant to the farm to schools or the Sustainable Ag Lands Conservation Program. The only other thing that I guess I want to just touch on as well is a DROPS program that we did at that was the Drought Response Outreach Program for schools, and that was implemented. I think we finished up in 2019, and just as the pandemic hit, we didn't really get to tell much of the story, but we were able to implement sort of stormwater projects at both Anderson Valley Elementary and High School, and then also at Ukiah High School. And for us, that was an really important project, just because they're great examples of stormwater management and what we can do with creating basins and planting trees in parking lots and digging up asphalt, George, and creating, filter basins that grow plants and pollinator friendly plants and sequester carbon. So there's a whole opportunity that I feel like we're not as active right now in, but there's consultants out there that work on it, and love to see more of that happening in our municipalities and any place where there's an asphalt or water running across an impervious surface, where we can slow and spread and sink the water. Because it was really fun to pull up some asphalt and build soil and see plants growing. So
Are there still monies in that program?
I think that I think there are. And so we need to take another look at that. That would probably be a Deborah Edelman question. I know that she is interested and looked at it, and there's so much potential that the Grace Hudson Museum parking lot, they're revamping. They integrated some of that. There's just a lot of strategies that any kind of city planning and anything that happens out there on the coast, when it happens, absolutely, there's so much technology and strategy for allowing water to sink in rather than just shedding off of these and putting in a bunch of impervious surfaces is really important for us to integrate into any planning or retrofitting. Yeah. So yeah, Peter.
I guess the question I have is, and I think you sort of highlighted it when you said, that there's what you said, 2 million acres of land in the county that's either in forest or agriculture or grazing land or prairie land. And so the population's pretty restricted to a relatively small amount of land, but your organization focuses mostly on land, right? So your focus is mostly on soil conservation, water conservation, that type of thing, but not so much on programs targeting specifically people in the communities. Although you're certainly dealing with the agricultural community and some of the more rural parts of it. But that's where I'm a little confused how, our organization, as I said earlier, most of our participants are not farmers or ranchers. I would hazard a guess. I'd say probably less than 1% would qualify themselves as farmers or ranchers, if any. So how can we take advantage of your organization in terms of the kinds of issues that we're going to be wrestling with? Like, for example, both the city of Fort Bragg and the county of Mendocino have asked the Coastal Commission to supply funding so that they can do major updates to their local coastal plans, which would cover a lot of ground between Wolala and the Humboldt border along the strip of coast. And so have you thought about that process and how your organization is going to fit into that?
To be honest with so part of what I think what I was touching on with the 2 million acres is that there's we have 13 staff and only a number of us work on natural resource, the programs themselves. Some of them are administrative, and then there's part of those is part of just the Willits bypass mitigation lands team. So that's its own team, right? That works on the Willits lands. So it's probably a capacity issue. I haven't even heard about, we haven't. So it's good that we have these kinds of conversations, and really appreciate being invited to, to talk with you about our programs, but we get to learn from you. We aren't really aware of some of these planning initiatives that are seemingly in the works. One of the things that is, we can work with municipalities. It's really, comes down to a scale issue and capacity issue. And so if there's a way that we can partner together with your group that has 400 people in it to help, maybe that's a lot of capacity, right? So we can play a role where either as a lead applicant perhaps, or we partner together, or if you're going, what I should be clear about is when I said there's no tax base is that we get all of our funds primarily through competitive grants, and we're very successful at that, but it's all project based, right? So our basic capacity for doing general education and outreach, or even project development, in the past we've gotten up to 40,000, and on a good year we got $75,000 once that I can remember from the county to help us with this kind of support for developing projects. And this year we got left out of the budget. I'm not meaning to get political here, but we have $11,000 that we're still trying to get from the county to help us support us to do our work. So we don't have a lot of it's another thing if we had base funding that we advocate for that on the state level from the legislature and we haven't been successful yet, that RCDs should have base funding in the state legislative budget. And so if there's anybody that out in your group that is speaking to legislatures, legislative bodies, we sure would love some advocacy for it, because we can't advocate necessarily for ourselves. So there is the state RCD that's a nonprofit that can do that for us. George.
McGuire's office, are you connected? And because they've been very responsive with us in a lot of the issues, and because it ties into the Great Redwood Trail conversation that's so important to McGuire and his office.
Yeah.
And it also has support from some of the Coastal Commission members. I mean, I think there's a lot of ways to answer that question, but are you already working with McGuire's office closely, or is that?
I wouldn't say closely. I know that I appreciate and I hear him in the forefront, and he's given us some support letters, but we have not had much face-to-face, and I don't think that he's really aware of the work that we do. And in terms of this climate, beneficial practices on a landscape level, we have these 7 years now, right, that we have to get to 2030, and the scaling up issue and the challenges that we're already facing with the climate impacts in our region are tremendous. And what is being asked of the RCD is poised. We have a lot, we know a lot of the strategies, we have a lot of the partnerships. There's always more to grow. We're going to kind of need everybody to be at the table now. And we need to work together to figure out how we're going to scale up to meet the challenges that are facing us. And a lot of that is going to be business, even consultant opportunities and business opportunities, and getting people in our communities to know how to do rainwater catchment or design and plan these stormwater basins and manage, construction, projects, et cetera. So, tons of opportunity right now. And that would be the other word I'd love to share on that, because if there's people in your community, we need to get trained up.
One more question. Are you working closely with Redwood Forest Foundation, Ruffy, or with, Mendocino Land Trust? Because one of the things that I've watched happen in the 20 years that I've been here is it's not just local people recognizing the incredible opportunities here. We now have the Nature Conservancy, the Conservation Fund.
Mm-hmm.
We have these very laudable local nonprofits that are doing this kind of work. I completely agree with you. We're in a moment of an amazing opportunity and almost certain disappointment if we just talk about it and don't start moving quickly, because the time frame is so short. But I think a regional approach is also what's getting funding from both the state and the feds. So it's to everybody's benefit if we can figure out how to work together in such a way that we're just supporting each other's best efforts and not doing the little tail biting, backbiting BS that happens way too often among small groups.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think we can leave it there, but unless anyone else has anything burning to add, it feels like that would, feels like we have a lot of work to do, and I'm really excited to hear about your efforts. We'd love to support them however we can. And back to Peter, your point on if there's coastal zone planning and Mendocino County planning, if there's an initiative that's happening, it'd be great to have the RCD at the table and to be written into any planning grants that happen so that we could be paid to be there, because we would love to be there and have share any of our expertise or experience that might be useful to that process.
It's a fascinating statement at this particular moment, since moments before I got on this call, I was on another call talking about pursuing grant funding for a major educational initiative along Mendocino's coast, having to do with the climate action and sea level rise activity that the Coastal Commission, the state parks, and Caltrans are going to be engaging with in the next 3 or 4 years. But that's certainly a component of, there's a lot of money. There's massive amounts of money. The problem is that getting the money and then having to build up the infrastructure in order to spend it wisely is a Herculean task. And the sad part about it is that it's underfunded in and of itself. So it almost precludes real effective action. At least that's my observation so far. I'm still waiting for people to show up with these big chunks of money and actually start spending them to get the people in the communities. There's some other factoids that we haven't touched on today that are really significant. 85% of California's population lives in a coastal county. So they're going to be impacted hugely by sea level rise and by climate change. And yet we still don't have a very robust mechanism for doing sophisticated modeling of what the impacts of climate change are going to have on individual communities. That's one of the things that we would like to see happen. GRI would like to see happen. But, is the money coming for those types of things? I haven't seen it so far, not in any usable format. So that's a conversation that we could continue to have. But I will say that, that the county and the city are going to be moving forward. That's a 3-year grant process that they're going to undertake, and it will, in fact, address all of those issues that you've been talking about. Most of that land along Mendocino's coast is actually undeveloped rural land. Most of it will see zoning and land use regulation being imposed through those local coastal plans that will determine how it will be used in the future. Most of it has to be conformed with the other state agencies that have a specific stakeholder interest in that land, like CAL FIRE, in terms of doing its job to maintain the fuel ground clearance programs. And so it's kind of sad that there isn't sufficient resources at the local level to really focus on pulling all of that together in a comprehensive way that involves the public. I like the idea of doing high school education programs, but you're really missing the point. In a lot of cases, it's not the kids that are ignorant of what's going on in climate change, it's their parents. And unless you're reaching them, you're not really going to have much impact, because they're the voters who elect the supervisors who decide what monies go to what programs in this county. So I have to tell you, it's a frustrating process for all of us, but people like George who can smile and get so much done with that. And I have to commend Michelle as well for all that she attempts to do. They give me hope. So on that note, I suppose we should probably call it, at least my participation in this should come to an end, because I've got to go do other things.
Well,
But keep in touch.
Absolutely. And just to clarify real quick, there's the coastal, are you talking about the State Coastal Conservancy, or is this it's a different outfit that does the zoning?
The Conservancy has $500 million to allocate for specific can-do planning and can-do projects. My wife is on the Conservancy, and she's meeting in Fort Bragg as we speak, handing out money for that. But the Coastal Commission itself has a separate pot of money of $31 million to allocate specifically for local coastal plan development programs. And that's what the city of Fort Bragg and the county of Mendocino have applied for now, or are in the process of applying for.
Okay, well, if you're, too bad Dan isn't here. Hopefully he'll see this. We at the RCD would love to be invited to that table, but if there's an opportunity to be written in or receive some funds from the county to support our participation, that would be most helpful. Otherwise, we just aren't able to either.
That's easy. Just go call Marie Jones and call Anne Marie.
Marianne. Sorry, just to jump in really quickly. Actually, Linda, I just texted Marie while we were on this, and so if you guys are in touch, definitely call her. But she might get back to me in a moment. And I think I have your email now, so.
That'd be great.
See if we can pull something off.
Yeah, Marianne Perillo over at the West Center is the other lead entity on putting together 2 big grant projects. One's the Strategic Growth Council grant collaborative proposal, and the other is the Community Economic Resilience Fund proposal. That's another $500 million worth of funding that the state's allocating, specifically targeting climate change issues. So, I mean, there's just an infinite amount of sources of money, so many that it becomes mind-boggling.
And, we're struggling with the same thing. So really great to have this conversation, and I hope it's just the beginning of many more. And you can think of us, we can apply for funds or we can work together. It's nice when like West Center's involved and we have grant writers to help with the process, and we can just help maybe, make sure the important points are in there and we're covering all the bases, so that whoever needs to be at that table is hopefully there, so that nobody's left out, and that we're really garnering all of the, I guess, the expertise that we have in the county and the region, because we have a lot going that I think we know almost all the strategies now, not us, but the strategies are mostly evolved and we know what they are. We just now have to get them on the ground, but it has to go through planning first. Yeah, so great. Thanks for taking the time and reaching out. And I will be sharing the Zoom link and the presentation. So really, again, really appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. Great.
Have a great day.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Really great.